There we are. Hello, everyone. We are at week 10 of the names of God, and tonight we are discussing consuming fire, jealous God, and it's Eshoklah and El Kanna. I'm gonna spell it because Janae is gonna go back and ask me what it was, and I'm gonna tell her I don't know. So it's Eshoklah and Elkanna. And so that is consuming fire and jealous God. And this again, this is week 10. So I wanted to start it off, and this is going to be a little more interactive than typically what I have, but I want us to think about what has been consuming us. And I say this because Miss Martha, you just brought up the exact reason why this is important for me, because I have so many things going on that are competing with my time with God. And so reading this lesson, I was like, you know what? He is a jealous God. And so I have to make sure that I am acknowledging and making the time for him that I know he deserves. And so it can be stress, it could be relationships, work, social media, fear, even good things that take up the space that we should be turning to our time with God. So I want us to think about that. Like we always think that sometimes that and this goes back to the good thing or the God thing. Like, are we doing God things or are we just doing good things? Because we want to make sure that the things that we are doing are in alignment with God and that they're God things, that they're not taking us away from Him, even if they're good. So it's not always the bad things that allow God to be this jealous God. So some of the scriptures, I'm going to read these. Exodus 34:14. And I'm going to read from the ESV. And it reads, "For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." And again, in this verse, um, where it's saying jealous God, if you read it in the book, it says Yahweh El Kanna is El Kanna. So that means he is a jealous God and he is not tolerating of rivals. The other one is Deuteronomy 4:23 and 24. And I'm actually read it from the book so that we can read it where it has the name. It says, "Be careful that you do not forget the promise of Yahweh, your Elohim," which are names we already talked about, "made to you. Do not make your own carved idols or statues that represent anything Yahweh or Elohim has forbidden. Yahweh, your Elohim, is Eshoklah and El Kanna." So he is an all consuming fire and a jealous God. And so he calls himself this, like a jealous God and a consuming fire. So what does that like really mean? So when God calls himself a consuming fire, he's not saying that he wants to destroy us, but he wants to like burn away everything that is not of him. So like the burning is a refining. And so we see God talk about fire in three different types of ways in the Bible. The first is we see him with his presence, and that's when Moses encounters him with the burning bush. We also see him with the pillar of fire. So when they are traveling, he is a pillar of fire and he's giving them guidance. And then the other way is his purification. So when he shows up as a consuming fire in our life, it's not to harm us, it's to do one of those things. Is to be a presence, a guidance, or a purification. And so it's his way of refining us. Um, what are some other notes I had here? So then here's another one is jealous. When he talks about being a jealous God, usually in our culture, jealous is something that is considered to be toxic. But God's jealousy is not toxic and it's not insecurity. It's a covenant love that he has with us. So when he says, "I'm a jealous God," he's saying, I choose you and I don't want to share you. In the book, it gives the example of like, I think it talks about a husband and a wife. And it's saying like basically the husband is not going to want to share his wife. That is the way that God feels about us. Like, oh, the baby woke up. Um, like not saying he's not saying like I don't care if you love other people too. He doesn't want us to love anything in the way in the manner that we love him, and that's why he told them, don't make any graven images. Don't put anything to worship. The only thing that you're supposed to worship with is me. And that's him saying, like, I want your whole heart. I don't want to compete with the idol. And again, idols are not these golden statues, or for us, I hope not, um, or the same thing that these Israelites had. Ours can be work, it can be your children, it could be your spouse, it could be your phone. And I was listening to a sermon on Sunday, and she was saying, today's idol for most people is their phone. Like you wake up, you pick up your phone. You wake up, you want to see what's going on. You wake up and you're checking to see your emails, you're checking your social media, you're checking your text messages before you check in with God. Um, and so for us, for many people, that has become what you think is nothing, but for God is considered an idol. And he wants us to commit that time to him. So, some of the questions, let me see. Now we're in here and I went through some of them. It says, what promises does God make in the Exodus passage? And in that, he promises his presence, his power, and his faithfulness. And then, what commands does he give us? And he says to worship him only, to obey him, and to tear down the idols. The warnings he gives us is don't forget me, don't compromise, and don't mix me with other things. So don't put God on the same level that we put anything else. And then he calls himself jealous because he's deeply committed to his relationship with us and not religion. And that's one thing that people also put in front of God, like the religion or um the what is it, like the traditions, instead of putting God at the forefront. Like you may have, and this is one thing I can appreciate about our church services, we may have a tradition of how church service is supposed to go, or we may have an order of service. However, if God chooses to move a certain way, that tradition or that particular order of service is out the window, because although we do things decent and in order, we still have to allow the Holy Spirit and God to have his way. um so that's really what I have about that. I'm going to stop here and then we're going to open it up.